We have a lot of information to push, so I'm gonna just kind of start. I just want to say thank you, first of all, for everybody that signed on here. If you don't know me, my name is Selena Brown, and I'm the Public Education Officer and Emergency Preparedness Coordinator for Woodside Fire. And tonight we're gonna talk about COVID-19, obviously, what's changed, how we've adapted to the situation, and how we're gonna thrive through all this. We have 6 panelists that will be speaking tonight. We're going to start off with our Fire Chief, Rob Lindner, and then we're going to move on to our town managers, Jeremy Dennis and Kevin Bryant. They'll decide whoever wants to go first. And then we'll have Laura Hovden of Red Cross speaking. And then we'll move on to Chip Swan, my A-team volunteer for our community programs. So with that, I will just hand it over to Rob, just because I know there's a lot of info. So,
well, good to go.
We got you, Rob. Look good.
Well, good evening, everybody. As Selena was saying, I'm Rob Lindner, Fire Chief of the Woodside Fire Protection District. For those of you who don't know me, what I was going to do is just kind of give you some information on what we're doing at a local level, at a county level, as far as our discussions with various agencies and stakeholders throughout the county, as well as things that we're hearing or things that we're concerned about as we exit these different stages or different phases and move forward with our normal way of life. So locally, as a fire district, we're doing well. We still have modified operations within the district itself. So as far as our administrative office is still closed to the public, but we're still answering phones. We're still responding on calls. We're still doing everything that we did before. We are doing at that level. We're opening back up as far as admin wise, kind of in relation to the town. So as the towns open up more of their operations, it kind of has a trickle down to us as well. So we're trying to modify to them. We're not trying to restrict the towns from being able to perform any duties. So our call volume in the district has decreased a little bit, and that's kind of systemic in the county and various parts of the nation as well. If they haven't been hit dramatically, the overall call volume dropped, but the COVID-19 obviously, accelerated that in one different direction. One of our biggest issues all along has been the personal protective equipment, or PPE, as I'm sure most of you or all of you have heard, as far as in the news. That has affected us as well. We haven't been depleted to the point where we haven't been able to obtain anything, but it is being spared accordingly, with the masks, the eye protection, the gowns, and any other equipment we might need. So we've altered kind of our parts of our operations to enable us to keep going in the case that we didn't obtain some of that. So example, we're using coveralls for some of our response equipment. If we go on a medical aid, if gowns aren't available, we're using coveralls. So that allows our personnel to get in and out easily. They don't have to take them off over their head. They can just strip down, with something underneath, but they take the coveralls off prior to going back into the station after a call, and they can do disinfecting, outside of our locations, as well as being able to clean them. So they don't have to take to a dry cleaner. We got additional washers and dryers at the station to kind of help us along with that. As far as our training was modified initially. We pretty much stopped all external training in the initial parts of it, the pandemic, but we've started to ramp that up slowly. So we're doing internal training, and we keep that going on. We've hired 3 people, and we had to put them through our own internal academy. We were able to do that by doing internal training. As far as our training with our neighboring agencies, the only way we kept that going was by doing it virtually, or if we had to meet in person, so to speak, we tried to do the social distancing while we did that. So we did some driver operations with varying agencies, and basically all the crews stayed in their pieces of equipment, and they operated the training via radios. so that we were able to do that. The main portion that's been starting to ramp up is our fire prevention, and we've had to ramp that up, both for the inspection process in relation to the towns, and as well as what we're doing for fire prevention related to our chipper program and our inspection programs. So we are doing that. The chipper program started in May, the beginning of May. It's going very well. And we encourage you to let everybody know that as they go through your various areas, that to try and get as much vegetation management done as possible, and we will take care of that. So that's going well. The next phase that we're going to be doing is our wildland inspections, or our residential inspections. And historically, what we've done is we have target areas that we go to. We are intending on doing that again. Initially, when we started to encourage that next phase of issues that could be happening in our district, we were met with some hesitance and some not necessarily resistance, but concern, as we're going through a pandemic, and now we're talking about wildfires. And is it too much that we're putting on the public? And that's not our intent to scare people, but the reality is that we are always at that possibility that it could happen at any time. So we want to make sure that everybody is prepared, and we're going to be as good as possible as far as our communications with the residents. So we're still doing that, and we intend on doing that, and we're going to take our residents, their frame of mind into account as we perform these inspections. If you want one, we encourage you to call up and have us. We'll come out and do that. If you're concerned about the social distancing, we will make sure that we take care of that as far as facial coverings and all the things that were required. We will still do that. We will still make sure to do that. As far as the stations itself, as I'm sure a lot of you know, we are in the process of trying to rebuild our main station in Woodside, Station 7, and remodel our station out in Brazola Valley, Station 8. We are going through the planning process and are well underway in both aspects, but here's the but. The main reason, or the main way we were going to get this accomplished, was through a capital campaign. And we were just in the initial phases of going to the higher end prospects. And with this that has now happened, the economy has changed, the just people's way of life has changed. So our ability to raise money to build fire stations right now, we are not looking at that as a potential windfall, because it's just reality that it's not going to happen probably at this time. So we're looking at other methods that we may have to pursue on trying to get these built. So ultimately, we want to get these stations built or remodeled, and so we will be looking at those avenues. As far as our county level, the San Mateo County level, the San Mateo County fire chiefs meet. Initially, once this broke out, we were meeting once a day. All fire chiefs in the county were meeting daily. We've scaled that back to where we're meeting once a week now. And in those meetings, we have all of the county chiefs, county EMS, American Medical Response, who provides the ambulance transport. And we basically go over what is going on at county health, what is going on in the system as far as all of our operations internally, and as far as in the system itself. So we're getting updates quite frequently at all those levels. And we do that, one, to make sure that we're consistent, because we don't want to do something that somebody else isn't doing, and we don't want other people doing things that we have no idea that they're doing. So the communication has been fantastic, and we've been doing that. We were also involved in the county public information officer meetings that happen multiple times a week. We are involved in the county manager's update with the elected officials. If you hear from the town managers, we are involved in those as well. So the communication through this whole thing, this whole event, we'll call it an event, has been really strong. So it is a good thing that the communications has been good. And we've been trying to reach out as often as possible. I know the county mayors have been reaching out via social media with the reports, and those are the reports that we're getting as well. So it's a good thing. One of the the biggest concerns that is out there now as we move forward is events that have happened in the past with the PG&E power, public safety power shutdowns. So we recognize that there were issues last year. We recognize that we have things going on this year that are much different. And so the county chiefs have reached out to the county board of supervisors, the towns, and the PG&E itself to try and make sure that we move forward positively and we provide, that we're impacting our citizens, the least amount as possible. And the other panelists might talk a little bit about this as well. But there is a webinar that PG&E is putting on for all of the stakeholders in PG&E. And there's going to be one on June 3rd that we'll give you the information for if you haven't heard about it yet. And the June 3rd webinar will go over events as they occur in relation to San Mateo and Santa Clara County. So they've had a couple already in various counties throughout the state. And our two counties will be on the agenda for that webinar in June. So we go from there. The only other thing that I was going to talk about that we're thinking about as well is, we respond to multiple areas in large-scale events, and as you've seen, wildfires break out all throughout the state. We usually send resources, statewide, and it could be in excess of 5,000 firefighters or more that are on scene of an incident. And historically, what we've done is we have a base camp that we go to, that is our off time, is usually through the base camp, and they get their food, they get equipment, they get all of their interactions are there if they're not on the fire line itself. Well, it's going to be kind of difficult with 5,000 people in a base camp. So CAL FIRE, Cal OES have all are in the communication stages of trying to figure out how we're going to do that. The events aren't going to stop. We're not going to not respond. We will continue to respond, but we have to look at alternatives there as far as, do we have multiple base camps? Are the sleeping arrangements different? Is the food distribution different than what it was in the past? Because we're going to have to do that. And so we're looking at that as well. And that's kind of all I have right now. I'm sure there may be questions out there. I'll be happy to answer any questions for you if you have any.
The only thing I want to add to the chipper program is first of all, we greatly appreciate, hold on one second here. I'm going to feature this back. Thank you. We greatly appreciate all the participation we've already had so far. The only thing is we want to make sure if you're going to be putting your piles out that you do not put them out more than 30 days before your pickup date. Only because that potentially creates a fire hazard. So also, I forgot to mention in the beginning, if you want to submit questions, there's a Q&A button on the bottom part of your screen, hopefully right next to the chat button. I've been monitoring the chat, but I'm also monitoring the Q&A, so you can submit questions that way. Thanks, Chief. I think from here, we're going to move on to our town managers, Kevin or Jeremy. I have not decided who wants to go first, but whoever raises their hand first, otherwise I'll have Jim feature one. Oh, Jeremy, okay. All right. And Jeremy's up. Oh.
Selena, thank you for putting this together. Really appreciate it. So my name is Jeremy Dennis. I'm the town manager for Portola Valley. I'm actually very delighted to see in the attendees list so many names of people who I miss right now. I haven't seen your faces. So hello to all of you. I think you know who you are. So I want to just give a brief update on what this has been like the last couple months. I think for those in Portola Valley, you may have already heard much of this through messages from the mayor, Jeff Alfs. We, like about everybody else, we shut down pretty quickly and have had our staffs working at home for the last 8-9 weeks. We do have, from time to time, staff members in the office who are performing duties that we can't otherwise perform. But in these last 8 weeks, we've made real leaps in providing levels of service electronically that we didn't have available before. And we hope by the end of this process that residents can do much of the important work they want to do with us electronically. It hasn't stopped the work though, so we have continued to meet with our colleagues in other cities. At one point, the city managers were meeting on a daily basis, moved to three days a week, now 2 days a week, where we have an opportunity to share our experiences, learn from one another, and move forward. As it relates to the important emergency preparedness work that the town is undertaking, nothing's really stopped. We budgeted last year, for this year, we budgeted about $30,000 to start important vegetation management work in the town's right of way. You may have seen it at this point. We've been on 8 or 9 streets in Portola Valley. This is work that will continue into the next year. Our hope is to focus on those areas where there is an opportunity to improve evacuation, places where there's emergency gates and the like. Today, a lot of work actually happened near the Priory on Portola Road. It may look a little different, but it's certainly safer out there. Our committees have started meeting again. Our Emergency Preparedness Committee recently had a meeting. And we have an ad hoc wildfire preparedness committee that has met once, and the subcommittees are meeting. Taking that backwards, the wildfire preparedness committee sent to the council a number of recommendations late last year to improve communications, evacuation, vegetation management, and improvements to our design code, and potentially longer term in the building code, to ensure that our community is able to deal with wildfires should they come. Some of that's already begun. The vegetation management's part of that work. There's other work out of that will be coming in the next year or so. So we're pretty excited about that. As I said, the EPC met recently. They continue their good work. We're very happy to announce that our AM radio is much more available, and you can hear it in much broader parts of the community than ever before. And I know there's at least one member of that group from the EPC who's worked on the AM radio, so I want to thank them on this. That's really important. We learned that last year during the PSPS events where we were communicating with folks. It was the easiest way to get information out when we lost power. It's been, more broadly speaking, I think it's just been an interesting experience learning about how we're going to provide service to the community in the future. We're learning a lot about what we're able to do from home. We're learning a lot about what we can do when we're in the office. We're sort of moving into this period of time where we're not sure when there will be a normal. We don't know what that looks like. We've embraced things like Zoom and these technologies. It does give me pause to think about what this might all look like when we go into a PSPS event. And I think it's really important that we all speak with one voice with PG&E about trying to ensure we see fewer of those and asking them to do more, which I think they should do. Really, for us right now, it's about ensuring that in the case of what WPV-Ready does, ensuring that we're ready to deal with emergencies should they come up. The team that would be in an emergency operations center during an emergency is still serving you. We would obviously be able to do some of this remotely. If we have to come into town to do that, we're set up to do that. So we've seen no interruption of that capability at all. And to what the chief was saying, I think the communication's just been absolutely outstanding during all of this. I feel very well connected to public safety and my colleagues in other cities, and have a good sense of where we are. So really what I want to do tonight is answer any questions that folks may have, and continue to be a resource to you. So that concludes my brief summary of what's happening. So thank you.
Okay, there was one question that was posed about the evacuation routes, and so I know Rob, you had I think in one of our other past meetings. I'm assuming it was pertaining to the evacuation, the company that we were working with before the SIP was put into place. They were just asking if the new evacuation procedures and routes have been put into place. So if one of you guys could clarify what the situation with that is going on.
The
Sorry, was
company
that sorry, go
whoever
ahead,
wants
Chief.
to. The company that we're affiliated with countywide is called Zone Haven, and we had the initial template drawn up. The county board of supervisors approved the funding through Measure K funds to hire the company and to start that process. Then this broke out, so the company is based out of Canada, so their communications with us other than virtual was limited because they were coming here, and some of the employees are here as well. But it basically went on a hold, as well as a lot of the major stakeholders in getting that up and running are involved with the San Mateo County Emergency Operations Center. So it didn't get shelved. It got put aside or delayed slightly. But in the last 2 days, it went back to the Board of Supervisors to get more funding to support this for a longer period of time, not just to get it up and running. And the County Board of Supervisors yesterday approved a 3-year contract through Measure K funds to fund this program. So the emails just went out today as to ramping this back up. So are they fully in place yet? No. Are the templates drawn up? The initial templates are. So law enforcement, fire, and some of the elected officials have been involved in that process. It will go further, and then it will go out further into the process where the public is then notified, because everybody will have a knowledge of this plan from the public all the way up to the administrators of this program. So it's not there yet. They're hoping to have it in the summer to have that completed. But as of right now, it's progressing, but it's not done yet.
Great. I do want to mention that I think we're going to be talking about the AM radio when we get into our section here, but don't forget about our AM radio station 1680. Lori, thanks for putting that on our Q&A there. There was a question posed in here. They asked, the changes to the design guidelines to building code for wildfire resiliency were both short-term projects approved by the town council in December. I don't know if this is pertaining to Portola Valley or Woodside.
It's Portola Valley, Selena. Yeah, and I'm happy to answer it. I'll read the rest of the questions so people know what it is. Changes to the design guidelines and building code for wildlife resiliency were both short-term projects approved by the town council in December. We were expecting to see them at this time period. Can you give us a detailed update date for both of these? So the question is a little inaccurate. Not short-term projects approved by the council. I will share in the chat a link to the adopted committee recommendations, but just for everybody on this call, the work for the town's design guidelines to the ACC are part of the medium-term efforts that would start this calendar year, so in 2020, and would continue into next year. It is a pretty substantial project, and that's same for some of the fire resiliency issues. So these are longer term. There are, I think, 16 short-term recommendations that are due to be implemented this calendar year. There were no recommendations that were due for implementation the fiscal year. So again, I will share this link in the chat room, and please take a look. Thank you.
Thanks. I think now we'll move on to Kevin. Let me just spotlight you.
Okay.
Yes.
Am I on? Can you hear me?
Yes, hear you fine.
Okay, excellent. All right. Thank you. Let me pick up with, maybe I'll I'll make the connection to fire prevention first before I talk about some of the other things. So like Jeremy said in Woodside, we kind of, we closed down when everybody else closed down back on St. Patrick's Day, which feels like years ago now, but in fact was only, about 2 months ago. And at that point, we basically went to remote work. So most of the town staff has been doing work remotely since that time, and we've kept a lot of things moving during that period. Most critically, our town crew, our public works crew, who actually goes out and does the hard work to keep the town safe and clean, they have been working throughout. They worked through. They never stopped working, in large part because of the fire threat's not going to go away. In fact, with the lack of rain we had this year, our concern is that that's more immediate. And in terms of the work that the town, or the things that the town is doing and has available to people to help mitigate the threat from wildfire, I presume most people on the call know about our defensible space and now a home hardening matching fund program. And I want to thank the chief and his staff for supporting that, promoting that. One of the things that they can do when they go out and do inspections on properties in Woodside is offer this opportunity for the town to help pay for some of that critical work that needs to be done. It continues to be well subscribed. The council over the years has never really put a cap on the cost. And last year, they actually increased the maximum grant to $3,000, and it's a matching grant, 50-50 matching grant. So anyone who spends $6,000 or more will get a reimbursement from the town for $3,000 for approved defensible space work. The other thing that the council did last year, and some people are starting to take advantage of, is some specific home hardening projects. So those are replacing wood shake roofs. The town can help pay for that. Putting in gas shutoff valves for earthquake safety. The town can help with that. And the other is replacing vent screens with more ember resistant vents. And as I said, people are taking advantage of that. The fire district and the inspectors have been great. I think the turnaround time in terms of getting an inspection to actually utilize that program is no more than a day, and they'll come out and see people. And I can report that in the last couple of weeks, I've seen an uptick. So I know that people are taking advantage of this. I know the fire district is out doing that work, and we're happy to help with that. The other side of that, that's the help that we provide on private properties. The other side is the town rights of way, where you see our crew, and they're out doing their mowing now. If you've done down Kenyatta, you can see the work they've done. I know they've also, I think this week they're on Mountain Home Road, and they kind of work through their list of areas in the town. The other thing the town has been doing is really trying to get a handle on the countless eucalyptus trees that we have. And we've had a program going back several years where the town is moving around town and removing eucalyptus trees and groves within our rights of way. One of the things that we had applied for last year was $1 million grant from through Cal OES, a $1 million FEMA grant. We did not get round one, but in the last week, we have been notified by Cal OES that they have some funds available to us for a lesser amount, but still a substantial amount. And the town engineer is currently working with them to try to get that secured. And I'm hoping that we will have that in place in the next 2 to 4 weeks, which will, in the last year, just to give you kind of an idea, we've spent about $300,000 on town trees. That's in public rights of way. The grant we would get from the state would allow us to triple that funding. So it just means that that program can go bigger and go larger, and hopefully we can get in even further ahead of the eucalyptus. And the main objectives there are, eucalyptus trees are in and of themselves fire threats. The other is trees that fall or get in the way of roadways become barriers to evacuation routes. So those are the two things that we really look at, prioritize. And again, we couldn't do it without the help of the fire district that helps us prioritize that work. So that work is important, and it's ongoing, and something I've said to the council repeatedly, and even going into the next budget year, which is going to be a little bit different than previous budget years. We're not planning to really stop any of that funding, and the town is in a really good position fiscally and financially to be able to do that. I think that's important that we continue. A little bit more about town operations. We are currently open by appointment. Really, our building staff is the staff that's there most days, supporting both permitting and inspections. And so we've been functional since the new shelter-in-place order took effect in early May, which allowed construction to restart. And we are seeing traffic. We are getting appointments. We are getting permits in. We are doing inspections. So we are able to do those things. And many of you here know that our building official is also my go-to person for emergency preparedness. And so, you know, that's been really a great combination of roles. And the building is, you know, now prepared. You know, we've changed both the way our office is set up. We've changed and installed things like sneeze guards, or the things that separate the customer from the staff. We've got, and Joanne, as I said, I can't say enough about her. She got on early, made sure we got our hand sanitizer, you know, touchless hand sanitizer, all that stuff in place and ready to go. So on the 4th, we were ready and open for business. And I think I said at the beginning, you know, our planning staff has been available online, and I know that they have been in touch with a lot of people who have questions and keeping permits going. Our planning commission, our ASRB, are both now up on Zoom. Some of our other committees, including the emergency preparedness committee last week, have started to reconvene, on Zoom. And the mayor actually made a pitch to the EPC, our EPC, to help us think long term about COVID and pandemics generally, and what that might mean for town operations, town governance. Really briefly on the PG&E part, just to kind of reiterate what you heard from the chief. The impression I get, and you know, proof will be in the pudding on this, but the impression I get is the PG&E heard loud and clear what the problems were, at least early indications of things that they're putting in place make it seem like this should be better, both in terms of being more targeted in where they do shutoffs, number one, so actually reducing the amount of places that would be impacted by them. And the second piece is, and pretty much related to that, is providing better and more specific information about areas that are going to be impacted. You know, last year, a lot of us were guessing based on kind of buffer maps about who was going to be impacted. And it became very frustrating for the towns, for every city, and for people to try to figure out what was happening. I think PG&E understands that. I think they're making improvements. They've really ramped up their capacity to deal with all the web searches for people that, you know, where they're trying to drive people to get information. So I would encourage you to attend the webinar that they're going to put on. I'm you know, cautiously optimistic that this year that will be a better experience. And of course, in a dream scenario, we don't even have to deal with it. But they certainly know in this COVID situation that they need to up their game, and I think that they're going to do that. The last thing I wanted to mention is, you know, we talk about the new normal, and none of us knows what that looks like. One of the things that the council here did last time, and we'll be taking up on Tuesday night, is really an allowance in the rules to allow the town staff to deal specifically with restaurants in our town, and allow them some more flexibility in operations. You know, we're assuming that for the foreseeable future, restaurants, when they're allowed to open, they won't be able to have full capacity inside their restaurants. But we got 6 months of nice weather, so we've already met with a couple of restaurants. You know, we want to help them if they want to expand outside and try to really get their business going using a little bit more of their real estate. We're gonna facilitate that, and you've heard that from other cities around us. I don't think there's anything unique or magic about doing that, but it is something that we are looking at in Woodside as well, and we're hopeful, and I know the council is very hopeful that we can start seeing, you know, businesses and restaurants start to open up even a little bit to let people get out of their houses and do things, and all, you know, all in this understanding and following all the social distance guidelines, which, you know, I think by and large people are doing and understanding what that means and why we're doing it. And I think we'll find a way. But you know, for the time being, it's just like everybody else. You know, we're in constant contact with the county. We sometimes know a little bit ahead of time what they're planning to in terms of health orders and the like. But generally, we're reacting the same way that everybody else is to that information, and doing the best to try to facilitate people getting back to a normal life to the extent possible. I think I touched on I guess the last thing I'll say is also picking up on Jeremy's point that this is, necessity is the mother of invention, and this is an opportunity for us in the way we do our work. We have shifted now to we have the capacity now to do full electronic plan review, plan check, which is something that we have not had before. I assume that when normal comes back, that our impact on the roadways will be less because we'll be doing more telecommuting because we've proven that we can and it makes sense. So with that, I think I will stop and wait for the questions that come for us. Thanks.
Thanks, Kevin. I'm seeing just a lot of questions pertaining to just revenue and spending. So maybe if either of the town managers can kind of just mention how you guys might have adjusted, how you guys are planning, especially since budget time is coming up here. One of the questions is how many dollars of town revenues have been lost due to COVID-19, and what are you doing to adjust the spending level? So let you guys speak on that.
Sure. This is Jeremy. I'm happy to go first. So in many ways, we've avoided some of the worst impacts that other cities are seeing. I'm sure it's similar in Woodside. The town of Portola Valley relies primarily on property taxes to support the budget. It's on the order of about 45% or so of all the revenue we bring in for the operational budget. Sales tax is a very small portion. This year, I believe we budgeted about $215,000. So that's not the same in other cities. Many cities depend heavily on sales tax. A city like Colma, for instance, with its big box stores and car dealerships would depend heavily on that. So that's certainly a revenue source that's been impacted. For the purposes of the budget work we've been doing, we made an assumption that in the fourth quarter that it would be zero, knowing it would be not zero. We've also seen an impact from particularly early on from the loss of revenue from permits and fees for planning and building and site development engineering, but that has picked up as we've been able to reintroduce service. Also, we've seen a reduction in fees related to renting our facilities and the use of the sports fields. We don't anticipate that changing anytime soon. So we came up with a report that we provided the council on April 29th. I will put the link in the Q&A and the chat in a moment of an amount. It was in a range effectively, but we believe that the impact was not significant. The other side of it is that there were expenditures that we weren't fulfilling. So expenditures related to some of the planning building activities. We did a freeze on some work in town and the like. And then obviously there were some contractors and consultants who were not coming in. So it wasn't as impactful. Longer term, I would anticipate some impacts for those revenue sources that have a relationship to the roads and the monies we get for our annual road maintenance projects, because some of them are sales tax based. They come from the county, measures that have been passed. So we took an approach that we didn't think we'd have enough information in the short term to effectively develop and recommend a budget to the council for next year. And that's coming up in a couple weeks. So what we're doing in the short term is taking the 1920 operational budget and bringing that to the council without significant changes so we can pass our budget statutorily, and then immediately start a real budget process that would take us to a recommendation at the end of Q1, so in September. At that point, we believe we'll have much more accurate information in order to bring a budget forward at that time. So, Joe, to your question, really, I think we've been fortunate at this point, just given our mix of revenue. And we also have a very healthy reserve. So we haven't had to dip into that quite yet. I expect that we will, because there have been some expenditures related to COVID purchases, but certainly nothing like other cities at this point. So I'm knock on wood, that there isn't another round of this at some point that has another effect on the revenue sources that we don't know. Thank you.
And yeah, my answer for Woodside is pretty much the same as Jeremy's. We're very strongly reliant on property taxes, about the same amount as Portola Valley. We don't rely a whole lot on sales tax, which we're seeing down this year. I think because it was maybe because it was a code change year, we've had record numbers, and we will come in with record numbers of permit fees relating to building construction. And even in the last couple of weeks, we've seen some big projects coming in. So that work is ongoing and helpful. And the other thing is, we are going into this with, we ended last year with a reserve that was equal to, I would say close to 90% of our operating revenue. So, we come into this with very strong reserves, and that's one of the reasons that we hold them. Like Portola Valley, I think we'll be adopting a budget in June, because we're obligated to do so, to legally spend money. I think in the year coming up, we always do quarterly budget reviews, and I think I anticipate that the year coming up, we're going to be looking at those really closely to figure out if there are other things that we need to do. But right now, I don't think we have to. We're not, like Jeremy said, we're kind of fortunate. We're not dealing with the same level of challenges that some of the other cities around us are, particularly those that are dependent on sales tax, and certainly hopeful. And I think we're positioned to endure this and come out stronger on the other end.
Thank you. So there are a few more questions here, but I want to keep this moving forward. We absolutely will answer all the questions. So thanks so much to the town managers. We're going to allow Laura Hubden from our Red Cross, our local Red Cross representative, to come on in and speak on their behalf.
Hello, I am with the American Red Cross in the San Mateo area, and I'm head of mass care there, and I'm also the regional representative for mass care for Northern California, which covers basically from Napa down to Merced. So mass care covers basically how to take care of our people if we have a big disaster. So when this whole COVID thing hit, we realized that that it doesn't change what we do, but it does change how we do it. So our immediate focus was to look at how we would take care of multifamily fires, which is one of the things that we get in San Mateo County the most often. I don't know if most people know, but the Red Cross, if there's a fire department comes out, and they will call the Red Cross, and the Red Cross will go, if there's an apartment fire, for example, the two big apartment fires down on Woodside Road a couple of years. So the Red Cross was there for several days and worked very closely. So we focused immediately on that because that was our most likely scenario in San Mateo County. And unfortunately for the people who were involved, there was a big multifamily fire up in Millbrae about 3 weeks ago. And so we were one of the first people in the country to figure out what we were going to do. We had already decided that the best plan of action was to set people up in a hotel if possible, rather than putting them open a big shelter. We had about 60 people, and that's around that many people not having a place to go is when we would naturally set up a shelter. We would normally set it up in like a high school gym or something. But because of COVID, we decided to shelter everybody in a hotel. Luckily, there are a lot of hotels available right now. We found a good place for them in San Bruno, and we're able to shelter them there until we were able to find a better transitional plan for them going forward. So this really gave us some of the first experiences of anybody in the country, how we would handle responding for our clients differently given COVID. We have a lot of virtual operations. We provided housing. We provided meals for them. We provided caseworkers who were able to to work with them to find the next steps. So initially we found that we could do the same work and we could do it virtually. We actually only had one person on the ground the whole time. So that was kind of nice that we knew what we were doing, and we actually proved that we could do this in a totally different environment. Now what we're focusing on now is we know that wildfires are coming. They come every year around here. So we feel confident about the hotel type of structure. So we're really focusing now on what happens when we have a wildfire up in Lake County again. We know we're not going to have hotels. We've already actually looked, and what we found is the fire departments have already gone in and and talked to a lot of the hotels. So we know that that's not going to be an option. So although it's not ideal, we're going to have to set up congregate shelters in high school gyms, rec centers, places like that. So what we're doing now is really focusing on how do we do that with the minimal number of people that we can to keep the exposure down for the volunteers. Also, a lot of the Red Cross volunteers are older and don't necessarily want to respond in person. So we're really working on how would we set up a virtual organization to support the people on the ground and still provide the same type of service. What that looks like for Woodside, if there was something that happened around here, we've already talked to the town, and we've already determined that if we needed to set up a shelter in Woodside, then we would use Woodside High School. The good thing is Woodside High has a lot of space, so we would be able to fit people in there pretty easily without having to go to another space. If we did need to go to another space, there's other schools and other facilities around that we've talked to. We've also met with a bunch of hotels. We've got a list of hotels that would be available if we needed to move people into a hotel. So the idea is if we did put them in a congregate shelter where everybody was together, that we would as quickly as possible move them to a hotel situation where they could be separated physically from each other. So that's kind of the focus of what we're doing right now. And it's really looking forward to wildfire season. We've got special task force working on that nationally because we're not the only ones. These the floods that are going on now in Michigan are providing us a lot of information. Luckily, we're further on in the wildfire fire season is a little further on. So hurricane season is, and all the flooding, we're going to really learn from what they're doing there to figure, by the time we need to do it, we'll have a lot more information on how to take care of the people in our area. So we've got, we know that we have PPE available, that we would separate people out. We would give much more space. Normally we'd set up a dormitory with, I forgot what the dimensions exactly are, but between the cots, but now we would have to be further apart. Some of the areas around here have actually done a simulation. So what we're doing is really working with the leadership to figure out what all this would look like. So when it does happen, that we're ready for it. So the other programs that the Red Cross does, a lot of people don't even know what they do besides, I mean, they do blood donations. And I think a lot of people know about that. That is one thing that everybody could do now because there has been a blood shortage. There are other programs that the Red Cross does on a regular basis, but they all involve personal contact. So those are pretty much on hold for right now. So that's what's going on in the Red Cross, and the way that the Red Cross would work with the town of Woodside or Portola Valley is if the town decided that they needed help from the Red Cross, they would call and we'd send people down and we'd set up shelters. We'd work with the town. We'd work with the any of the partners that we can to be able to provide support for the people in the area. Any questions, anybody?
That was great. Thank you for stressing the need for blood donations that obviously has been on a lot of our community platforms. Let's spotlight me back on here. So there isn't any questions pertaining specifically to Red Cross currently at this moment, as far as I know. Oh, wait. I'm not sure I can read this. How many people does Red Cross provide? I think that's just based upon probably resources, if I'm not correct. I think that was a general question. If you, Laura, want to go into the chat and see.
So we have a lot of people locally, and what would happen is if we did not have enough people available locally, we would pull in from the other areas. We support San Francisco, we support Napa, our regional area. We go wherever we need to locally and nationally, actually, to support whoever's in need. We would probably keep more people locally if possible, just because of the travel and the keeping the workforce safe for travel.
Yeah.
Great, thank you. And that just makes me want to just touch on a note that, if you're looking for opportunities to volunteer, now that we're going to go on to the next panelists, Mark Dolan and Chip Swan here. There are lots of opportunities to volunteer, whether you want to volunteer on a local level in our towns or more of a county level. There are many opportunities. If you go to the San Mateo County government website, smccounty.gov or smchealth.gov, there are lots of ways to help out and donate blood and whatnot. So
there's another site, Selena, called Volunteer Match that has a lot of local volunteer opportunities.
Yeah, and there's it seems like I'm unfortunately not on Facebook, but they're Facebook, Nextdoor, lots of these kind of homegrown grassroots programs have, really stepped up to helping, the whole helping neighbors thing. So this is a great kind of transition into our next speaker. And Chip, I don't know if you want to play Mark's bit first, or if you want to speak on WPV-Ready's behalf. I will leave it up to you.
Well, I see that Mark has, hang on here, where am I? There we go. I see that Mark is in the meeting here, but I don't see him responding. So, I'll go ahead and talk about the WPV-Ready stuff. And if we don't see a sign of life from Mark, he's probably gotten sucked into his childcare duties, and I know he's got a sick pet there and so forth that they're dealing with. So we do have a video from Mark that we can sub in for him. First question, was anybody out there clairvoyant or prescient enough, I guess I should say, to buy Zoom stock in December? Because these guys have just got to have made so. Who saw Zoom coming when there were companies like, Skype and GoToMeeting? All these guys have supposedly had it sewed up, and then Zoom ate everybody's lunch. I love it. So WPV-Ready, the Emergency Preparedness Program, clearly in the past, we've depended a lot on being able to get together and exchange knowledge face-to-face and have classes and have meetings and so on. So it's kind of knocked us back on our heels, and we've adapted fairly quickly to a lot of this, figured out how to serve the community and what we can do in response and so forth. And we'll come back and talk about some of those points a little more later. But, the big thing is that, well, no more classes. And what should we do about that? Well, I think everybody kind of held their breath thinking that, oh, this won't last long. They're going to come up with a cure. And we're all going to be back to big mass gatherings, and everyone's going to go to church and and forget about this. And on the other hand, now the reality of it seems to be that COVID-19 is going to be part of our lives, probably forever, just like influenza. Eventually there'll be a vaccine and we'll all get a regular shot and still try to not get it. And it'll just be something that you deal with. So let's start adapting. What do we do moving forward to continue with our community preparedness, with our preparedness community? Well, we need to start giving classes again, and we've been talking about how to do that. We're going to be putting together some classes to give online, our basics of emergency preparedness class, our fire resiliency class, the first aid kit class. All of these things can be mostly done with online presentations. And in fact, it gives us an opportunity to dive in a little deeper on some topics. We can still have the short version, but we can definitely then unpack some of the things that are worth going into in a little more detail. We're getting good at producing videos, and hopefully we'll get some more of that out. We've also been talking about doing what we want to call maybe emergency minutes or ready minutes, just a series of just short little. So you want to know how to put on a mask. So you want to know how to wash your hands. So you want to know how to put on a splint. Well, we're going to show you 60 seconds. The most important things that you need to know. If you've got 60 seconds on your coffee break, come and get a little polished on that point. We're trying to get a lot of those things going. And that leaves us with a lot of practical hands-on things that still you really can't teach without some hands-on face-to-face. How do you train somebody to do a lift, for instance? And Mark will probably talk about this more later in the CERT training. How do you train somebody in how to lift a log off a victim, or how to carry somebody? How do you have two people carry a third person? How do you practice for that without getting together? So eventually some of these things we're going to have to get back on vigorously. But by the time that we're able to do those things face to face, we should have a good library of online presentations where you can learn most of these skills and see them done. And then we can focus a lot of our face-to-face things on just clinics, hands-on clinic stuff, really put the finishing touches on people's skills that way. Of course, there's no first aid or CPR classes going on right now. Selena, any plans there? Laura, I think you said the American Red Cross has totally shut down a lot of things, and I imagine first aid and CPR classes are something that just aren't happening anywhere right now.
Yeah, but just to cut in really quick,
Yeah.
so with the WPV-Ready side, at least we'll wait to hear from Mark's video that he sent in. But the WPV-Ready side, like Chip was speaking about, we absolutely are adapting our programs like the basics of preparedness class and even our Ready first aid kit training class to go virtual as best as we can. We were planning on doing this before the SIP was put into place, but now obviously we have much more incentive and motivation and time on our hands. So now there are absolutely ways we can transition into a virtual training session, whether it's through Zoom or a YouTube video. Like Chip was saying, the hands-on skills are a little bit more difficult only because there is a safety factor there. If you are doing heavy lifting or anything like that, or you're doing some sort of skill, if we can't see you closely, then we obviously don't want you to be risking yourself. So with the WPV-Ready side, with the classes that we're holding, we absolutely will be catering to the whole new way of life, as we can say, with the virtual classes. I'll send it back to Chip.
Hello. There we go. I'm still here. I got to work out how to get that glare out of my glasses next time. The district-wide mailer is going out, and we've been working with the fire department on putting out a mailer just to gather up basic information, trying to get as much information as we can on who's living where and roughly how much special needs do we have? People who need a little special attention in an evacuation, or if there's an earthquake, people that need checking on, children, people with medical conditions, and so forth. So we're gonna start blasting that out every year, and we've got the first one pager ready to go out there. I just ask everybody out there who's in a division leadership role or in any kind of a neighborhood leadership role, if you are into emergency preparedness and anybody in your neighborhood listens to you, please ask them to look for this mailer and fill it out, send it back to us, because everything we know about our neighbors helps us respond and save lives when something goes wrong. The online store, the WPV-Ready. As you know, we were growing a store. We were selling first aid kits and we were selling water containers. And now, since it's so risky to be in contact with people, we have just suspended that. So there's, we weren't making a lot of money on it. We don't see any reason to expose ourselves to the risk going forward. We're still going to try and fulfill the orders that people have paid for and so forth, and everything that's sitting out there. And as soon as we're able to be in contact with people again, we're trying to have an even improved buying experience up there for people. But for the time being, it's just not possible to place new orders for first aid kits and water containers. The WPV help for the shelter in place, the volunteer organization that we threw up to help out. There's also, there's the PV Cares that was put together out in Portola Valley, fantastic system. We were thinking about how do we support something like that district-wide that we can coordinate together and so on. And we came up with WPV Help. And if you haven't been to the website recently, WPV-Ready.org, please check it out. There is a page there now on COVID-19 and has some basic information and links to a form where you can sign up as a volunteer or as a resident who needs help or could potentially need help, whether that's transportation or just doing some basic help around the house or some shopping. And we've had phenomenal response from residents signing up to volunteer, and about 10 to 1 people asking to help versus people asking for help. We've only had 3 or 4 people asking for help, and that was to help them do some shopping. So our community does seem to be helping each other out very well. I encourage everybody that wants to volunteer, please look towards the greater community, reach out to Redwood City, Palo Alto. There's a lot of people down there that need help, even worse than the people up in our area do. We're actually pretty well off here. And we got decent health care. What happens next? Returning to normal. As I mentioned, it's not a new normal, it's just normal. The universe has thrown something strange at us to deal with, and it's a virus. Last year, we were learning to cope with public safety power shutoffs. And next year, there'll probably be something else. And we'll be looking back at COVID-19 as something that we've just learned to adapt to. So, going forward, we need to be concerned going into this fire season. Are we ready for these public safety power shutoffs? PG&E says that they've done a better job of managing the impact on the residents. From what I've seen that they've released, they seem to have done some sensible things, and it sounds like they have mitigated the impact on people. The season will show how it goes, because of course Mother Nature has proceeded to make California burnier in the meantime as well. So it's kind of a never-ending game, but we hope to be harder to ignite before it gets here. And what have we learned from this whole thing? Well, it's not just, oh, now there's public safety power shutoffs. We got to cope with that. Now it's pandemics. Maybe in general, we should take pandemics into account. But in general, how do you become more flexible so that when the next new thing comes along, we have some slack built into our planning and we're ready to cope with something like maybe in a couple of years, it's going to be a winter storm coming out of the Pacific that's 10 times stronger than anything we've ever seen. That would be a brand new phenomenon. for us. And we need to kind of think forward in terms of, well, how do you prepare for things that are not a pattern yet? And we're talking about it, and we've got some ideas, and the whole world is kind of starting to think along those lines, and well, we should. So I'm optimistic that we're going to get better at getting in front of these things. I think that's about it for the readiness side, for the preparedness. In terms of the response side, our CERT team, Mark Dolan, as I said, had prepared a video, but also if he could make it, he was talking about presenting. Mark, do you want to present, or you want me to throw your video up there?
I might just say a few introductory words before my canned video goes up.
I agree. I think it'll be perfect. Oh, new location.
Yeah, new location. This is my beautiful new office, I wish. I was not sure I could be here, so I did prepare a little video. Forgive me if it is redundant to some things that have already been said. I do notice, looking at the attendee list, that there's a lot of people that are kind of deep in the CERT ready world, so I hope there's some useful information in the video. And that's really all I wanted to say for an intro.
Good.
So
I'll go ahead.
the video, and if you have problems rolling it, I can roll it from my other computer if you grant me attendee on the other Mark Dolan account.
Let's just see how this works, Mark.
Good evening, my name is Mark Dolan, and I'm currently the chair of the Woodside Emergency Preparedness Committee. I'm also very active in the WPV CERT and WPV-Ready programs. And this evening, I'd like to talk about where we stand with WPV CERT. Specifically, we'll talk about the 2020 earthquake exercise that had to be canceled back in March, training classes and how we're going to move forward with that, an update on communication systems, and an update on the disaster service worker program. The 2020 earthquake exercise that we had originally scheduled for March 21st, we canceled early in March. It was quite clear that COVID-19 would have a significant impact, and because it's a very hands-on exercise, we realized very quickly that it was not going to be able to happen. That's certainly unfortunate, because the exercise is a major component to developing the CERT program and engaging both towns' emergency preparedness groups, and developing and documenting procedures and best practices that we're going to roll into the standard operating procedures guide as part of the disaster service worker credentialing. And of course, it's a big way of promoting the WPV CERT program within the community. We had a very successful initial exercise back in 2019, and we were hoping to follow that on with this exercise at the Portola Valley Town Center. But for the foreseeable future, we'll have to put that on hold. I do hope that we can get some exercises, perhaps virtually scheduled, such as another tabletop and functional exercise that we can do in an online form, so that we can continue to focus on these procedures and practices and further develop the program documents. So with respect to training classes, unfortunately, all in-person classes will have to be canceled until further notice. The CERT curriculum is a FEMA-based curriculum, and we would need to wait for any guidance from FEMA if there would be any way to make modifications that would be allowed. So that's not likely to come anytime soon. But this is a good opportunity that we can start to develop virtual classes. There's no reason we can't have leadership and command post, or what we also call order from chaos classes, that would be an online seminar style. You can also do communications or radio training classes, and then more specific deep dive topics. This is a really potentially great opportunity to build up our virtual list of training topics that can become YouTube videos, which will be helpful for follow-on training. And after, when we do get back into the classroom, there's always a lot of specific questions that the students have, and it'll be great to be able to have a real library of specific videos that we can point people to, so they can further keep learning, and also for refresher training as well. Moving on to communications. This is always a popular topic. Over the last several months, we've been working on building out a CERT two-way radio system. And the purpose of this system is to ensure that CERT members have a communications system that is working and available even if cell phones and internet coverage fails in a major incident. And because many CERT members are not amateur radio operators, we wanted to build a system that would have a low barrier to entry and be accessible to all of the CERT members. So we have been working on designing this system in light of the complex terrain that we have in Woodside and Portola Valley. It's a rather challenging task to get good coverage in all parts of the district, but we spent several months doing propagation modeling and testing and site selection, and we're currently have 3 repeater systems that are up and being tested, and we're ready to proceed with the FCC license application and finalize the frequencies for the system. So once that comes back, we'll permanently install these repeaters and develop the documentation and training so everybody can use it. And ideally, we'd like to have all CERT members be able to have a radio that they can keep in their backpack. So we'd like to offer a pre-programmed, relatively low-cost radio that anybody can purchase and not require the amateur radio license to have. And so that'll make it more accessible to everybody. Once this is all in place, we hope to have monthly nets where people can use the system and practice using their radios. And this is also a system that can be helpful if in the upcoming months we have additional power safety shutoffs like we did last summer, where several of the neighborhoods lost cellular access and internet access. Then at least the CERT members will have communications. I want to also specifically thank Ray Rothrock for all of his assistance in this project. And also want to mention for current division leaders that there's no change to the existing SERP division radios. That is this primary system used to communicate between divisions and the town EOCs in a major incident. There's no change with that as of right now. So please just stand by for additional information in the upcoming months about this new system. A quick update on the Disaster Service Worker program that we've been working on getting implemented. Last year, the towns appointed the fire district to be the authorized designee to oversee this program. And we've started a draft standard operating procedures document, which is the formal document which outlines activation procedures, training requirements, and other key parts of the program. And we were hoping to have the earthquake exercise to give us some additional insight into writing some of the key components of this SOP, but not having that opportunity. We do need to continue drafting that document, and once it's in a more complete form, then it'll be presented to the town emergency preparedness committees for their input. And just a final comment, we do continue to have our SERP operations committee meetings, which meet the second Wednesday of every month. We're doing that via Zoom. And please reach out if you would like to be included in our email notifications. This is all, of course, a volunteer program, and we could use as many volunteers as possible. So thank you very much to Selena, to Chip, Armando, and all the panelists for putting this together, and have a good evening.
So, I think we're back to you.
Great. I don't really have anything to add to that. Some of that was redundant, but we have been making lots of good progress. And even in light of COVID, a lot of this is going to continue online, and all the work that we've been doing the last couple of years is going to hopefully kind of come to a close, and we'll get a CERT team that is, really, it's equipped, it's prepared, and really looking forward to it.
Excellent. Yeah. Selena?
Yeah, hey there. Thank you so much, everybody who's been on here. There was a last question just pertaining to the purchase of gas-powered home power generators. I don't know if either of the town managers, it just says, my wife and I would like to know what thoughts you have regarding the purchase of gas-powered home power generators. I know that the population in general basically in all the areas that are affected by PSPS, have the quantity of generators has gone up immensely. So I don't know if you guys had anything to add to this or had any answer for this.
I would, this is Jeremy. I would say, Joe, I'll give you a Portola Valley answer. Certainly would encourage a backup power, but it would consider something that didn't run on gas. I think there's more sustainable options out there. So we certainly could speak to you offline about what those may look like. But we think that that would fit in pretty well in town. I know there's also natural gas ones, but certainly something that is a battery backup system would I think be a great addition to your home.
So the only thing that I would say is, if you're going to do that, make sure that you pull permits, get it inspected. What we don't want is a generator to start a fire in the middle of a PSPS event. That's the worst case scenario. So, and then, I turn to the fire folks who will have a role in that process as well.
Wholeheartedly with everything that you're saying. There were events in other areas that fires did occur, whether that be people put flammable, not even necessarily just flammable liquids, but just flammable debris or anything else next to the generators and caught that on fire. So there was a increase in the number of that. So pulling permits, if you are going to go to that nature, it definitely helps as far as having you having the ability to have power, but make sure that you do it right.
Yeah, I'll just have to back that up. I know our Fire Marshal Dawn is actually on this webinar right now. So if you guys have any further questions after this pertaining to generators or anything of that sort, please just reach out to us in our phone or email. I can put this in the chat room here, what our phone number is. And I'm going to put his email on here as well. I'm sure he's going to love that. But just to kind of close, I just want to say, first of all, thank you to all of our panelists and speakers. You guys provided a lot of really great information. I know right now we're all kind of just adapting, and a lot of information that we're providing in these Zoom meetings is kind of redundant, but as long as we're pushing it out to more and more people that we haven't outreached to before, all the better. What I can just ask for from the residents is to please, if you know of anybody that wanted to listen in tonight that just couldn't because they weren't available to give the time up tonight, that this is being recorded and will be posted on our WPV-Ready website by this weekend. So WPV-Ready.org. It will be posted on, we'll put it on the homepage there. Chip will handle that for us because he's our guru. But let's see, I think I might have one last closing. Chip, do you have anything to add to this?
Chip will do what?
Post you'll do everything, just like, oh.
We'll have that all posted up there. And there was a section in there when we were doing the video from Mark that I clobbered the audio. So the video from Mark will be available separately in its entirety too, just so we have a clean copy of that. Or if I can clean that all up in the video editor, I'll just do that. But all this material will be up there.
And then there's one last question. As division leaders, what do you want most related to the residents in our division? Anything that we push out, whether it's through our MailChimp program for WPV-Ready, if we say push this out to your neighbors, we want that. Right now, all of us are, through the shelter-in-place order, we had this discussion earlier about how we've all become much more aware of preparing for disaster situations in this current pandemic. And so we're kind of realizing that even if we think we're prepared, we're maybe not to the level that would make us comfortable in a disaster. So go back, check out all your supplies, check out all the equipment you may have, reach out to your neighbors again. I think connection and networking is what's most important for us to maintain connection. But lastly, what I really want to stress is the district-wide mailer that we will be pushing out via WPV Ready Cert / Woodside Fire. When that goes out, if the division leaders can just stress the importance of having the residents fill that form out, the directions and information will be on the mailer. It's going to be pertinent information as to what we can utilize after a disaster, during a pandemic, anything that would be extremely important for us to know, that you as residents would want your neighbors to know, that you would want your emergency responders to know. We will be doing it annually, and we will be sending it out for the first time here very soon, as soon as we can. So that would be my main message, is just try to get that message to your neighbors to provide any information that they think is pertinent. So with that, I think we're doing great here with the timing. I can't thank you all enough for taking the time out to speak to all our residents. Again, if there's anything else you guys would like to add. If not, I'll just close the session and say have a great evening and a great Memorial Weekend. Please, I know with the nice weather and whatnot, we're really antsy and we want to get out there, but please try to adhere to the order. We don't need a second wave of, we don't need to have to restrict put heavier restrictions on us. So I know it's going to be hot and it's going to be nice and we're all getting antsy, but please just try to maintain the shelter in place order as best as you can. And I know the managers are probably going, yes, please, please. And we hear it all the time, but please do this for us. We're all doing it for you. But thanks so much for joining us tonight. And
Selena, I would also say, I'm sorry to interrupt, but just thank you to the division leaders. I mean, what you all do is just, there aren't words. So thanks for what you do. Thanks for continuing to do it. We know we will be depending on you at some point. So let us know how we can continue to support you.